Over the course of its lifespan, the Yu-Gi-Oh series has always shifted between two completely different styles. The first is the style of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, dark, intense, serious, and gritty. The creatures, the settings, the characters are meant to feel evil and scary and threatening. The stakes feel high, the consequences of losing feel visceral and dire. It's not to say that other Yu-Gi-Oh! Series in the other category don't have some of these elements to them, but they don't exactly do it the way that DM and the other series in its vein do. The other series are a lot more lighthearted. There's high stakes and usually something that needs to be done to save the world, but it doesn't feel as dark and mature as DM. The characters are usually a bit more carefree or wacky. Things just don't feel like they carry the same weight. I would say that in the same category of DM are shows like 5Ds and Vrains. They're clearly meant to appeal to a broader audience and focus more heavily on violence, oppression, conspiracy, the occult, and even death. On the other hand, we have GX, which arguably you could say is sort of split between both categories because it takes a much darker turn starting in Season 3 and continuing into Season 4. Zexal, Arc V, and I would say you could include the Rush series in there as well. Today, I want to talk about 5Ds, its potential as a darker Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, and the exact moment that it fell off. We're going to talk about some of the events that preceded the falling off moment in future videos, but today I want to focus specifically about the moment that the show felt like it lost its edge. First, let's talk about what 5Ds did right, and what it had going for it up to that moment when it fell off. I know that when 5Ds was first announced, it was met with a lot of skepticism. Not only was this the first time we were getting a new type of summoning mechanic, but people were also hating a lot on the idea of dueling on motorcycles, and they were memeing the hell out of it too. I was on the fence. I thought the sleek white design of synchro monsters and the concept of using a tuner and a non-tuner to summon them was cool and interesting and different, but I wasn't quite sold on dueling on motorcycles. It felt silly, which, you know, to be fair to Yu-Gi-Oh!, it did have a lot of that in its history up to that point when linking the importance of the card game to the real world, but this still felt like an absolute stretch. Despite the skepticism, the first chunk of the 5Ds anime was an absolute masterpiece. Starting with the first 26 episodes of the Fortune Cup arc, the world building was done incredibly well. Neo Domino City is introduced as a paradise, an exciting, futuristic city that exists as the pinnacle of society. An awesome place where pro-dueling is showcased as the #1 pastime, and the futuristic vibe of the city, I think, also really fits the feel of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the anime, where futuristic tech has always been a part of it with the solid vision dueling system, the holograms, the portable duel discs that can project the card images anywhere. It really works well in kind of setting the tone as this just amazing place that you'd love to go to and get to participate and engage with the Pro League circuit. Contrast that with Satellite, a rundown city that looks like it's been the victim of a World War II bombing. Everything is destroyed, everything's in disarray, and the people that are forced to live there are known as Satellite scum. Essentially second-class citizens who are constantly hounded by the security police. It's essentially an apartheid city, where people living in Satellite are treated like the worst of the worst, simply for existing in a place they're prevented from leaving by law. An apartheid city is an incredibly adult theme to base an anime on, especially one focused on a card game as its central plot point. Still, this gritty and dangerous environment serves as an excellent backdrop to make the duels feel more impactful compared to previous series. Duels are often used to escape the law, settle disputes with other factions within Satellite, and as a way to exert power over others. Winning or losing can determine the consequences you might face in the future, like being thrown in jail or getting beaten up by another gang. It creates a sense that the outcome of the duels is about more than fun. Because of this setting, every episode feels like an adrenaline rush of danger, excitement, and mystery. As we follow Yusei's progression through Satellite to confronting Jack in Neo Domino City, being thrown in jail, escaping jail, taking his dual runner and deck back from security, and then entering the Fortune Cup, the stakes never feel like they aren't incredibly high. And even though all of these events are focused on dueling, we get a lot of real-world elements to ground the focus of the series. Yusei has to duel to escape Satellite, but he also has to pull off an incredibly dangerous feat of navigating through a massive trash dump and through an opening that is only open for a small amount of time to make it to Neo Domino City. He gets arrested after dueling Jack and experiences some really harsh conditions in jail. He has to go against security again and basically pull off a heist using underground connections to even get his deck and duel runner back into his possession once he's been released. Before and during the Fortune Cup, we have incredible side characters like Aki, Bomber, and Mukuro, who are not just sticking to dueling to get what they want. They're using violence by any means necessary and playing for keeps. Throughout this, we have tons of occult and cult references as well, with the mysterious introduction of Iliaster and Arcadia, two groups that pose viable threats with unclear goals. Rex Godwin acts as an amazing antagonist who at times seems to be helping the protagonists and sometimes hindering them. He's a mysterious character who's impossible to read and makes you want to keep watching so that you can learn more about what his true goals and motives are. And speaking of Rex Godwin, all of the other side characters around Yusei are pretty great. Aki is an incredibly complex character with a dark unknown past, a twisted ideology, and at the end of Fortune Cup, she starts to become someone who you start to feel sorry for despite the atrocities you've seen her commit. It becomes incredibly clear that her allegiance to Arcadia may not be completely of her own will, piquing further interest. Jack is another really interesting character, starting out as a frustratingly cocky antagonist who eventually goes through his own doubts and struggles after realizing he was about to lose to Yusei in their first duel, and wondering if he's really worthy of being the king of dueling. Ru and Ruka may be the worst of the side characters, but they still feel fun in a way, and I think that their personalities are accurate and match well for what you would expect of a kid their age. Even other side characters like Yanagai, Himuro, and Saiga have interesting dynamics to their character and experience real-world problems that still somehow manage to tie back to the game of Duel Monsters itself, making them solid additions as the sort of peanut gallery of the main gang. We also have people like Gil Ransborg, Mukuro, and Bomber, who are really cool and well-designed pro-duelists that help build out the world and make it feel like Duel Monsters really exists in this world as a WWE-style sporting event. Even fodder characters like Professor Frank and Commander Koda are creepy enough to maintain your interest as you watch them play and engage with the main cast. The Fortune Cup arc concludes with an explosive and emotional duel between Jack and Yusei, and the next arc continues at the same pace by immediately introducing the Dark Signers and Dark Synchros. The stage is quickly set with a fascinating new summoning mechanic, and a dark, mysterious antagonist group making use of it. Throughout the first few episodes of this arc, we get really good character development from Jack as he processes his first real loss as king, and from Yusei too, as we learn about his past with Team Satisfaction. The beginning of the Dark Signers arc comes to a head when Yusei duels Kiryu in what's possibly one of the best duels of 5Ds, if not one of the best duels of the Yu-Gi-Oh series. Yusei has struggled in certain duels up to this point, but I think this is the first time we see him really get pushed to the absolute edge. We're hitting his emotional limit, his limit in playing the game of Duel Monsters, and his physical limit because of the dark writing duel with the geoglyph in effect that can cause real damage. The geoglyph writing duel also does a great job of just upping that danger level to what's going on, upping the stakes of winning and losing, and making writing duels feel like something that is not a joke in any stretch. It's something exciting that you want to see from this series. We get some really good new side characters introduced as well, with Carly and Crow. Carly was a great addition to the series and acts as a wonderful guide to Jack, helping him through his development, but also is kind of someone that you can relate to as somebody who is constantly trying to get her life in order and is kind of living one step away from just losing her job and losing everything she has. I think Crow was fine at his introduction. in this first chunk of the series. He wasn't stealing the spotlight. He wasn't overtaking anybody else in the series. We'll talk more about him later, but I don't think he was too much of an issue at this point, and I think he acted as a good bridge to bring in Yusei and Jack's past and show more about Team Satisfaction. After Yusei loses to Kiryu, things transition to showing what's happening with the Arcadia movement and Rua and Ruka getting tangled up with them. I really enjoyed this arc as well. Despite wishing that it had been Ruka who had dueled Divine, I thought that it made sense for Divine to be pursuing other signers after seeing what Aki was capable of. And I think the series did a good job of showing him as a violent and powerful individual to be afraid of. He was ruthless against Rua, and especially vicious against Carly, two characters that do not invoke a sense of threat and are not threatening in any sense of the word when they're being shown in the series. Carly vs. Divine was a heartbreaking duel, ending with a horrifying transformation from Carly that gives us more insight into what a Dark Signer is and how they came to be. The rematch duel between Carly and Divine was really satisfying. It was great to see Divine on the ropes getting the absolute piss taken out of him after everything he had done, even if it was upsetting to see a now evil and deranged Carly being the one to do it. Misty versus Aki wasn't too exciting in contrast to this duel, but it never felt like it was supposed to be a full-fledged conflict, just an introduction of the conflict between the two and a way to showcase some of Misty's deck. And that's it, in my opinion. This is when 5D's hot streak of banger after banger episode came to an end. There were a few in that chunk of 40 episodes that weren't amazing, like Ruka's duel against Professor Frank, but they still felt like they were on track and following a good path. They were relevant to the plot. Starting with episode 40 is when things really went off the rails. We didn't have any non-plot related episodes for quite some time, but it just felt like the plot did not continue on its original path starting from here. Episode 40 focuses on the rehabilitation of Aki. Her parents are introduced as a remorseful couple that's trying to save their daughter from the path that she's walked as the Black Rose Witch. After speaking with Jack, they learn that Yusei is the only known person who was able to get through to her, if only a little. As they bring Yusei back with them, Hideo explains to him Aki's past, and this is really where things start to fall apart. The way Hideo and Aki's mother Setsuko are portrayed is as distraught parents, grieving their mistakes and desperate to do whatever it takes to help Aki. They don't seem like unkind or unreasonable people. And as Hideo explains Aki's backstory, there isn't really much there to make the viewer connect with Aki's pain. As a kid, she was upset that her dad worked a lot and was never around to play with her. This is normal kid stuff. There's nothing to feel bad about here. When he does make time for her, she accidentally unleashes psychic powers and attacks him because she got upset. And Aki's descent into darkness starts in that moment when Hideo calls her a monster, something he says he regrets deeply. Now, I know parents make mistakes and say the wrong thing to their kids all the time. We're all human, it can happen. But Hideo and Setsuko haven't been portrayed as having any real serious flaws or having anything but love for their daughter up to this point. It's hard to believe that this one mistake he made when she was 5 was enough to make her spiral out for the next 11 years of her life. If they were portrayed as being rougher around the edges, or if this attitude from them continued on a regular basis and was continuous abuse, I would find it more understandable that Aki turned out the way she did. Not only that, but Hideo continues to say that they had no idea what to do with Aki and her powers. So they sent her to a duel academy. Really, your daughter has the ability to manifest playing cards as real objects, and you sent her to a school where the explicit purpose is to learn how to play those cards. She needs a dual disc to do this, something that is standard issue for students. You basically handed her a backpack full of grenades and said, "Okay, sweetie, now don't lob those at all the kids who are bullying you." We do see another scene where Hideo smacks Aki for unleashing a gigaplant on a bunch of kids, but still, they try to make it seem like he didn't do it because he was a bad dad, but because he was scared and upset with Aki. I mean, again, they really shouldn't have let her have the dual disc and the cards in the first place. But even still, it's just hard to feel angry or upset with Hideo and Setsuko, or to see them as responsible for who Aki became, other than maybe giving her the dual disc. But the message that's being sent again and again with these parents is, they aren't bad people, they were just scared and confused. They made a mistake. If anything, it makes Aki seem like the unreasonable one. And to be clear, I'm not excusing Hideo hitting Aki. Parents should never hit their children. Physically harming someone to make them stop a behavior or to use physical abuse as a learning tool is never a healthy solution as talking things out. Talking things out will always be better. But we only ever see it happen one time. Being called a monster and being hit once was enough to make Aki a complete psychopath who relished in hurting others with psychic powers? It's a long shot of an explanation, and it's tough to buy. For these incidents to be the ones that made Aki spiral out, it makes it seem like she's a bratty child, blowing two admittedly bad moments out of proportion and becoming a terrorist in a cult organization as a result. I think it would have made more sense if we saw this behavior from Hideo continue. Maybe if they had emphasized that he continued physically abusing Aki to soothe his own ego over the power that his daughter had over him with her psychic abilities, and maybe her mom continuously berating her for being a monster and not fitting the family's needed public image for her dad being a senator, her dissent would have made more sense. And it would have made what happened next feel much more reasonable. Really, the only thing that was needed to make this stuff work and make you feel sympathetic towards Aki was consistency, was for this behavior from her parents to continue and possibly escalate. The inability to connect with Aki and her struggles is made even worse when we see her destroy her parents' house after she runs away from Dual Academy and sees them happy and interprets it as them being happy because she's gone. In real life, teenagers do tend to overreact and have dumb meltdowns like this all the time. Puberty is a bitch, no doubt about it. But this doesn't help make you have sympathy for the girl who's portrayed as having deep issues that cause her to use psychic powers to physically hurt opponents by obliterating them with her abilities. At this point, we're under the impression that she literally killed a kid because of these issues, and portraying this moment as just another big misunderstanding is not making Aki's actions seem justifiable in any way. Her parents are just painted so sympathetically, it's hard to feel bad for Aki. None of this stuff adds up for her reasoning of becoming the Black Rose Witch. It's all just misunderstandings, overreactions, and the behavior of a seemingly bratty girl that leads her into the hands of Divine. And Aki certainly did not feel like this character up to this point. It was a complete assassination of who we had been introduced to in Fortune Cup. The backstory is just bad justification for all of the things that were not yet revealed to us when we first met Aki. When we first meet Aki, she's ruthless, striking opponents down with her psychic powers without hesitation, and oftentimes with glee. In her first duel with Yusei, we see some cracks in this persona and the possibility that maybe under her cold, ruthless psychopathy, there's a hurt teenager looking to be saved. But the backstory we're given is not sad enough for me to feel like she really needed to be saved. She needed a therapist maybe, but that's probably about it. Yusei and Aki of course end up dueling. and throughout the duel, they clash over their view of the world. Aki says the only place she had to belong was with Divine, and Yusei tells her she's wrong and she had a place with her parents all along. Hideo once again comes across as a saint and takes some of Aki's psychic attacks and tells her to stop hurting people and to hurt him instead. Yusei and Hideo continue to tell Aki they won't give up on her. Hideo apologizes for calling her a monster, and with the power of love and friendship, Aki realizes her parents do love her and asks Yusei to defeat her, which he promptly obliges. Okay, but does anyone remember this conversation from season 1 between Yusei and Aki?
お前自身が変わる時がやってきたんだ。お前を苦しめてきた破壊への喜び、その痛みが同じあざを持った俺たちが共有する痛みに変わってきたんじゃないのか。俺たちを導いたこの印、この痛みは何かを訴えている。その答えを得るには自分で考えなければいけないんだ。その答えをこのあざは持っているんじゃないのか。考えを預けるな。お前自身で考えるんだ。魔女の私が何を考える。ディバインが私を導いて愛してくれればそれで。違う。お前がお前を愛するんだ。そんなことができればできないから苦しんでるんじゃないか。
Does Aki learn to think for herself here? Or does she just cave to Yusei and her dad telling her what to think? In my opinion, it's the latter. Aki doesn't actually learn anything from this confrontation. She goes from following Divine and believing his every word to following Yusei and believing his every word. It took some conflict to get there, but that's basically where she lands at the end of the duel. What happened to thinking for yourself? Especially with the cultish nature of Arcadia, this was a solid message to send to Aki and to have her learn. But that's all thrown out, and she just ends up replacing one male role model to obsess over for another. The idea of Aki learning to think for herself and love herself is never explored again. In fact, she basically latches on to Yusei for the rest of the series in the same way she latched on to Divine. Although arguably in a healthier aspect, it's a healthier connection, but still, for a series that has constantly lacked strong, impactful female characters, shafting Aki like this was not the move. I think that this obsession with Divine wasn't really explored either, which was another avenue that could have made Aki feel more like a tragic figure. Divine gained her trust by tanking her psychic powers, a move repeated with the same effect by Hideo, not a healthy parallel in my opinion, and that's basically all it took. We don't get any deeper look at Divine brainwashing her, manipulating her, controlling her, other than what we see in Fortune Cup, which felt more like a hint of a lot of deeper things under the surface and not the entire issue. Building this relationship out more and showing Divine using cult tactics to further send Aki down the road of darkness could have saved all of this. Leave everything with her parents the same, including this, and suddenly it becomes, yes, Aki was a bratty, emotional teenager, but her parents dropped the ball and Divine took advantage of that and used her. But we just don't get enough showcased to make that seem like the case. It comes across as Divine gave her one lousy speech and tanked some of her psychic attacks, and that's all it took for her to go all out and kill people for him. A better way to end this duel, in my opinion, between Yusei and Aki would have been for Aki to win. This would have accomplished several things. One, if Aki won without hurting Yusei with her powers, it could have been a moment to showcase the start of her being able to control her psychic powers, possibly through the power of thinking for herself and focusing and not listening to the commands and the wills of others, and then through extension, not letting her powers run rampant and out of control. Two, it would have been a great moment for Yusei to lose again, coming off his defeat at the hands of Kiryu, so that he can cope with his fear of losing in important moments and realize that he still has room to grow and can improve and become someone who can defeat the Dark Signers. The duel as a whole was also really lackluster. Yusei gets smacked around non-stop by Aki for pretty much the entire time, which I was pretty fine with for the most part. Normally I do enjoy duels with a bit more back and forth, But I think it made sense thematically because Aki was raging out of control and Yusei is trying to contain her. But he never seems to mount a comeback. He's constantly on the ropes until the last second when a single, somewhat situational, but also kind of feels broken trap card bails him out and wins him the entire duel. It's a card that combos off of Aki's hedge guard too, so it's not like it's something he was building up to for the entire duel. It just makes it feel like a huge ass pull for Yusei to win that way, in a moment where a loss would have suited him better and helped with both him and Aki's character development. This is also the first time we have Signer Dragons clashing since Jack and Yusei's last duel at the end of Fortune Cup. Why not have a similar situation happen where the clash rends space-time and has the Crimson Dragon appear? This could have been a moment to do some more lore dumping on the Signers, their history, their conflict with the Dark Signers. Aki always believed it was her Signer mark that gave her psychic powers. This could have been a moment similar to Yugi vs Kaiba, where the Crimson Dragon could have shown the two something from the past and revealed to Aki that her Signer mark was unrelated to her psychic powers. This would have been a great way to strengthen the bond between the Signers, the purpose of the Signers as a group, and given them a real reason to band together to face the Dark Signers. After this duel, Aki duels 4 more times throughout the next 110 episodes and basically fades into the background for the rest of the series. The Aki we were introduced to was powerful, she was heartless, but she also had more beneath the surface. And as soon as we dive beneath that surface, we are shown a puddle when it should have been a vast ocean. They completely assassinated her character, and I think they realized it too, because I can't understand why else she would be taken from such a prominent role and placed in the backdrop of the show. The only other reason I could think of would be Crow. We're going to talk about him next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of the exact moment that Yugioh 5Ds went downhill. If you guys like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. As always, I love reading you guys' comments and responding to them, and I will catch you guys in the next one.